watching Parker Success Academy with Dr. William E. Morgan.
Hello, I'm Dr. William E. Morgan, and this is Parker Success Academy, where we explore models of business success in chiropractic practices. Today I have a very special guest, Dr. Jeff Langmaid. Jeff, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. I'm excited to be here. We connected years ago, and I've always respected what you've been able to do at Parker, and I'm thrilled to have a great conversation that hopefully adds a bunch of value to the docs that watch today.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about your business model?
I'm happy to do so. So I have had a very unique journey within chiropractic. I've been an associate. I've been a clinic owner of a small boutique practice downtown Providence over 15 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. And then my journey went to an interesting place. I was able to practice within a few different multidisciplinary groups. So it really opened my eyes. I know you've had this experience as well, where it opened my eyes to how really healthcare is being delivered outside of the chiropractic space, potentially how chiropractic can integrate within that, while also showcasing what makes us unique as chiropractors. So the journey has taught me a ton. I'm continuing to learn each and every day. And I see that there's just such tremendous opportunities for chiropractors out there that did not exist 100 years ago, certainly didn't exist 50 years ago, maybe didn't even exist 20 years ago. And that's where I love chatting with you, because I know the integrative model is just, it's so interesting, it's so progressive, and it offers chiropractors the opportunity to do what we love in a new setting.
And to get patients. So you're coaching people along. I know you promote something like the World Federation of Chiropractic would call EPIC, where you're evidence-based, patient-centered, integrated, and collaborative. So other than chiropractic, what type of therapies and professions do you usually see people have in their practices after they've
So that's a great question. So a lot of the docs that I've worked with, and where I worked with as well, it was really about getting to those primary care providers and working with them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean having them in your practice as a colleague, but as referral sources. We know that over 30% of the daily volume that a primary care doctor or internal medicine doctor sees is neuromusculoskeletal related. We also know that less than 5% of those individuals really require any surgical intervention or have red flags. So it's a tremendous opportunity to provide what we do as chiropractors to those individuals. Now, in terms of internal, with a colleague perspective, my experience is practicing with orthopedic docs, and that was full ortho. So it could be spine surgeons, it could be hip, ankle, knee surgeons, physiatrists, pain management doctors, and sports medicine docs were sort of the team that I worked within. And then we would, of course, work with other individuals in the field, which again, leaned more into primary care doctors. But the one thing I'll say about that as well is, as a chiropractor, it's about exploring your passion. So we were able to build great relationships with OBGYNs and midwives, with sports med focused docs, with concierge docs in the community as well, because bottom line is 90% of individuals are going to have some sort of spine related issue in their life. And us as chiropractors, the guidelines showcase we should be that first line option. Many docs are so much more open to it today than historically, and the options really are limitless in terms of what we can offer our patients. And that's what it's all about, is being able to get out there, communicate what you do as a chiropractor, but in the vein of the benefits that you provide the people in your community.
Brilliant. So you had a collaboration with a orthopedic surgeon, it sounds like, where someone who may want to have a practice treating pregnant women may want to go develop relationships with gynecologists or midwives. So what you've done with your practice, you could choose that specialty. And certainly, having worked in 5 hospitals and collaborative clinics, I realize medical doctors realize themselves they don't have the answer, and they're looking for drug-free solutions, and we can be that. And if you do this right, I mean, for me, I tell people, if you had 10 physicians, medical doctors, who referred you one patient a month, just one a month, you're made. And that's not that far-fetched. So here's another question for you. What would be your definition of success?
My definition of success is really being able to kind of set your own terms, being able to do what you are passionate about each and every day. And for all of us as chiropractors, for everybody on planet Earth, that can be different. And us within even just within the chiropractic space, there's such a breadth and depth to interests and topics and applications of what you do. But to me, success comes down to being able to wake up in the morning, being able to impact people's lives and being able to do it in a way that makes you proud. If you're able to do that, I think you're successful. It's not about the zeros in whatever you accumulate or accomplish from a monetary perspective. I look at success as inward. Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you making an impact? And are you passionate each and every day? Because it's a cliche, but it's so true. You know, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Amen.
And I've just seen that to be true time and time again. And it becomes more and more refined the more experience I have. Another way of saying, as I get older.
Well, I always like to bring that success definition back to one of character and authenticity versus money or patient visits. So if I was to go to a doctor and his or her primary interest was to see how many visits they could get me to come in, I'd be real, as opposed to fulfilling my desire for my health, I'd be disappointed in that doctor. So one of the things we like to do in this series is to explore areas that we want to provide value to our patients. And one of the quotes I have is, it's really our obligation as doctors to be successful, because you never want to make a clinical decision based upon your financial needs. It always has to be back what that patient needs.
You're 100% correct. And I'm going to take it one step farther about the obligation portion, because this is where I think, I'm going to say, regardless of your philosophy within chiropractic or where you sit, I'm going to say it's your obligation to get out there and reach out to like-minded medical professionals in your community. When I say medical, I'll expand that to healthcare professionals. You might not resonate with every medical doctor in your community. Well, find that concierge doc. Maybe you're passionate, as we discussed, about pregnancy-related care. Well, get to those OBGYNs, those midwives, and those doulas. We know, and the research has now caught up to showcase, that chiropractic is a fantastic first-line option for a variety of different neuromusculoskeletal issues and conditions. And the application of our practice can, again, be so varied that it really is doing your community a disservice if you're not willing to get out there and have conversations. Doesn't mean you need to be friends with everybody. Doesn't even mean you're going to build a referral relationship with everybody. But the onus is on you to find those dance partners, as I call them. Find the individuals that resonate with you, that have your patients in their practice. But the only way you do that is by getting out, extending the hand, and learning. And I'll tell you what, even those doors that close that aren't going to be those great partners, that's also a great education process, because as patients then ask you about where they can go, you can provide them educated information on the practices that you work and providers that you work best with. And there's no better way to be a chiropractic physician, to be a chiropractor, than be able to teach, be able to educate, and be able to direct the people in your practice.
Brilliant. And for me, is the more you pour yourself into a community, the more that community will give back to you. If you move to a town with the intent of taking from that community, people will see right through that. But if you go there and you're give through loving service, as we say here at Parker, that community will love you back, and you'll be successful. The biggest practice management tool I would say would be loving service. You give more than you take. You're well-read, and you've studied a lot. Is there one book that you'd recommend to our audience that you would recommend to read?
Yeah, I actually came somewhat prepared. It is a puny little book that I have right here. And you can see it's not very thick. It's not good. It's not How Good You Are. It's How Good You Want to Be, by an author named Paul Arden. I think it's $6 on Amazon or your local bookseller. And it is just it's light reading, but it's empowering. It's inspirational. And to me, it's something that I can just open a page, read something, and there's been ne'er an instance in a decade plus that I've read this book that I don't open it up and get something out of it to stimulate a new thought, a new idea, a little bit of extra motivation or inspiration. So this is a book I go to all the time because it is just easy. It's super easy to read. You can't go wrong with it, but it's provided me value time and time again. I try to read about 3 books a week. So I plow through a ton of material, and I love marketing books. I love business books. I love biographies. But of all things to stick out, it's this little guy right here.
So are you actually reading those books, or are you listening to them on Audible?
I'm 100% reader. Yeah, I do not do any audiobook. I'm a podcast guy, but all of it is reading. And I'll tell you what, some of them, I feel like I just started and I'm finishing. And I got a book right now that I'm reading on my bedside of Theodore Roosevelt. I feel like I've been reading 3 hours and I've read 1 page of it. It's so dense and thick. But I'm all read.
I usually go through 2 or 3 books a week myself. What I'm doing right now is Chasing Excellence. It's about the CrossFit coach to the champions. It's my brother who's a chiropractor recommended it. It's a good read. Very motivating, but it applies to chiropractic. It applies to business. Now,
I'll have to check that out.
so you've had a real interesting career, but you always haven't had successes. What's the worst moment in your career that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think there's two things that really come to mind, and they're quite different. One is clinically related and one is business related. And the business related one was when I had my first practice that I owned and operated. It was Providence, Rhode Island, and probably about 15 years ago or so. And I built it to be a boutique practice, so about 600 square feet downtown. My thought of it was I'll design this so it looks halfway like a high-end clothing boutique, halfway like a hair salon, or so it was just like very high-end, small, cash-based practice. And my biggest challenge was being able to market effectively. I found to get my unique message of health out there, I just didn't have the experience, the tools, the resources. And there was just so many days that I went in thinking I didn't have anything else to think of. I thought I was doing everything I could to build and grow, and it just seemed like I was unable to get any traction. So I look at that as a learning experience because it really stimulated new thoughts, new ideas. And, for me, it was in many ways looking at business leaders within chiropractic that maybe I hadn't looked at before, being able to attend new seminars, new coaching that I hadn't experienced before, and also to look outside of chiropractic and see, hey, what are successful people in business doing that I can draw from, that I can learn from, that I can get that one or two nuggets from. And it really stimulated for me a lifetime of learning that I would say maybe I was less diligent about before. So the challenges associated with building and growing really have directly, not indirectly, but really directed me to where I am today. So that's from a business sense. Now, in a clinical sense, I can say the last multidisciplinary group I worked with two. And the last one I worked with, we saw a lot of very challenging cases. So sitting down with, there's a patient I'll never forget. They were fused from occiput CO to sacrum with 2 levels untouched, 2 segments that were not fused. And this is just a challenging situation when you have to sit down with somebody like that, and they're looking for any help they can get because of pain, challenge, they're unable to walk. There were just such a plethora of healthcare challenges with these individuals, specifically this individual that was fused top to tail, that it's a great reminder, tying into what we talked about earlier. It's a great reminder that person needs to be exposed to who we are and what we do earlier. Now, I don't know exactly every step of their case history, and maybe it was something well beyond what we could have assisted with within chiropractic, but I cannot help believe that at some point or multiple points throughout their journey of these multiple tacked on fusions, that there wasn't an opportunity to provide relief without installing more hardware. And bridging the gap and building relationships with surgeons, physiatrists, those other healthcare professionals might have given an opportunity for this individual not to end up in that state as they walked into the practice that day and I examined their MRIs and CT scans. And to me, that sort of drove the nail down sort of in my heart and soul, saying, I'm passionate about interdisciplinary care. I'm passionate about the relationships between other healthcare professionals, because the bottom line is, as you brought it, it comes down to service and it comes down to that patient. And if we're unable to get into that care continuum, if we're unable to really have that offering from a patient perspective, they're unable to have that offering, it can really result in devastating challenges long-term.
It goes back to being successful so that people come into your office. And it also sounds like that you built this awesome practice, but people didn't know about it. So I love that you kind of treated this like that was your tuition to learning more about how to market your practice. So what was a pivotal moment in your journey?
I think a big pivotal moment in my journey was when, with the first orthopedic group I joined. So we had, about 50 physicians, 45 surgeons, 5 non-surgical docs, and, the chiefs of all the local hospitals and 12 practices spread throughout the county. And that really opened my eyes to, healthcare at a different scale and level than I had been accustomed to in private practice or as an associate. So it was a really eye-opening experience because it was interesting to see what's going on from a clinical aspect. Okay, what are the decisions that these docs are making? How are they going about their day-to-day? How do they set up their schedules? How do they go about billing and coding? Just the practical things of really, operating, no pun intended, a practice. But the other aspect of that was also seeing the marketing. Okay, when you start to have these increased budgets, when they're starting to have the availability to do many things that most chiropractors either haven't explored yet or are unable to do due to financial constraints, okay, great. what are the nuggets that we can learn? How was I able to, and that's really what I kind of put my nose to the grindstone and said, what can I learn from what they're doing? And how can I apply it to what I do as a chiropractor? And then in a best case scenario, take opportunities like these and others to be able to really distill down some of those messages, some of those learnings to other docs, other chiropractors in the field so that they can better build and grow their practices, because there's so few of us who have had that experience in those large scale healthcare systems. And it's eye-opening when you see it, for better and for worse. So it's a really important, I think, to take the better, understand the worse, and apply it to be the best chiropractor you can be.
Great answer. So here's the next question, Jeff. What advice would you give a younger version of yourself as you graduate from chiropractic college?
That's a fantastic question. And, it's difficult to rewind the clock always, because I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't gone through the journey. But when I look back, one of the big things that I think I'd encourage myself to do more of is really to learn from leaders. And those leaders can be within and outside of chiropractic. And it was really once I started to go to some of the fantastic, seminars and really, put into practice what I was learning, and go to things, outside of chiropractic, some entrepreneurial and some technology conferences that I started to see what else is going on in business. It sort of widened the scope. I know all of us as chiropractors, we love to take care of people. We get into this because we love to serve people. But one of the challenges with that is sometimes we can kind of get those, blinders on, and you end up in your practice kind of going through the motions, and you're working hard, you're growing. But with that comes a linear focus. And while that linear focus is what ultimately drives success for many practices, I think it's also important to take opportunities when you can to step back and see the wider picture. So I'd encourage docs out there, go to your local events. Be sure to get those continuing education credits locally and connect with those colleagues, but also take the opportunity to go to some of these larger conferences and seminars. Really see what's out there, because that might influence, it might stimulate, again, a new idea, a new thought. Maybe you make a connection that you wouldn't have expected in the past. And, it's like the branch and the twig. I always forget how it goes, but, one thing can change the direction of how something grows. And maybe it just reinforces and accelerates your current growth pattern, which is awesome, but it also might open up something that you never expected in life.
Well, at Parker Seminars, we like to bring in subject matter experts from outside chiropractic. I mean, we've had Cal Ripken. We're signing on a couple big names just now. David Goggins, Damon John, different people from different areas of success, because success leaves hints. There's a trail. There's things that happened that made them successful that if you abide by, it'll make you successful as well. So that's when people come, they're like, well, we have these non-chiropractic speakers. Yeah, but they're experts, or the top of their field. What did they do that we can bring in our profession, to my practice, to make me a better chiropractor? Now, chiropractic marketing and advertising to patients has been a big topic. What tips would you give based upon your practices in the past and your coaching?
Yeah, I think there's two big challenges that most chiropractors deal with. It's content and consistency. Being able to, looking at a blank sheet of paper and thinking, what am I going to talk about today? If you're about to shoot a video or create an image, that's tough, right? So, having content is one aspect of it. I'll talk about that in just one moment, but the consistency part, it goes hand in hand with it, where if you put something out once a year or, once a month, it's very difficult to get traction. So consistency is absolutely critical. Put it on your schedule. Take the time to do it. But then you say, okay, I can get my head around consistency. What about that blank sheet of paper? What am I going to talk about? How do I get out there with content, right? That's where I think, what are the benefits that you provide? Always think about it from a patient's point of view. And I'll give a super practical example right now. You might think to yourself, I think I want to talk about cervical radiculopathy and how disc challenges can lead to cervical radiculopathy. That's a pretty good chiropractic topic, but it doesn't mean anything to patients. The question for patients is my arm pain coming from my neck? Now that's a title that the people in your community are going to resonate with. So think about, from a content perspective, which means your emails, maybe you're putting things out on social media, maybe you're shooting some videos, whatever it might mean for you. There's a variety of things under the banner of content, but think about it from a benefit-driven perspective of what's your patient dealing with? What are the people in your community dealing with? If you proactively address the answers to the questions they already have about their health and well-being, and you do it consistently, as we talked about with part 2, you're going to be setting yourself up for success long term. You're going to build a heck of a lot of know, trust, and like factor, and people are going to come in ready to be a patient in your practice. And that is the best place to be in.
Great answer again. So what's something that keeps you up at night?
Something that keeps me up at night ties back to, I think, a culmination of everything we've talked about. What keeps me up at night, and I put this slide up sometimes when I speak, and some of these are necessary, don't get me wrong, but when I see over 1 million spinal surgeries occurring each and every year, 500,000 plus fusions, nearly 500,000, laminotomies, laminectomies, and foraminotomies, I can't help but think, gosh, I don't think all of those people fully explored their conservative care options before going down there. And that, what keeps me up at night is the fact that we have tens of thousands of fantastic chiropractors out there serving each and every day, and we're still barely scratching the surface in terms of what we can do. And for anybody that's not heard me speak before, I'll say one other thing to be clear. I think chiropractic can apply itself well beyond just neck and back pain. But when I see the stats of neck and back pain, I'm like, man, we haven't scratched the surface, and people are struggling and suffering. And if we can make an impact there, then we are going to really change the directions of people's lives. When somebody goes through the surgical procedure, the anatomy's changed forever. The biomechanics are changed forever. Their life has changed forever. And sometimes those red flags, those emergency cases, thank goodness for that care. But many times individuals we have seen have not fully explored what they can do conservatively. And a lot of that comes down to, are you making connections at the top of the funnel with those primary care physicians, with those physiatrists, with those people before they get to the surgeon, including the surgeons as well, but especially those providers before they get to the surgeon that might offer up an option outside of a surgical option as the next, but an opportunity to explore more from a conservative realm. That's what keeps me up at night, because I think people should have every opportunity they can to stay well, to stay healthy, and to stay performance oriented naturally.
Bam. So what I found is people who want to have a wellness practice, my recommendation, if you want to have a wellness practice, be really good at treating spinal conditions and pain. Because when people come to your office, for the most part, they come for back and neck pain. If you want to convert them to a maintenance care or wellness practice, if you don't help their pain, why would they trust you with their health? One of the concepts I would say, plus there's a basic standard that all chiropractors should be able to deal with these spinal conditions, regardless of what specialty you choose to have. Now, we at Parker frequently talk about the 10X concept. What is something that you did in your business that had a 10X return on its effort?
Copywriting. So, being able to convert the message into action. Another way to say that, sometimes I say it, taking the content and putting it into the proper context. And with me, that resides a lot around, research and literature. And I like to look at that stuff. But I'll tell you what, it's not like reading this book here. You look at a research study and it's like, man, these things are hard to read. I'm a doc that's been doing it for a while. It's still hard for me to understand sometimes exactly. So copywriting, the art of taking a concept or theory that's complex by nature. And don't be fooled. Everything that we do as chiropractors is complex to the patient. The understanding of the people in your community about their own bodies and healthcare is so incredibly low. We forget about it because we don't know what, we don't remember. We only know what we know today. So breaking down those topics, just as I did with the example earlier, if you're thinking about talking about a spinal disc, causing cervical radiculopathy, take a moment and think about copywriting. So when I say that, it's like, how do I take that and make it actionable? Well, if I start talking about arm pain, your arm pain could be coming from your neck. I know the people in my community, is probably a couple thousand, have that going on right now, number one, and they're looking for a solution. But that's a very easy concept to understand. So when you can start taking what you do as a chiropractor and put it into terms that is just unbelievably easily to digest, it doesn't always mean oversimplifying it, but it means telling it in a story, telling it benefit driven, thinking about it through the patient's eyes. Great copywriting does that. And if you're able to do that, inevitably, you are going to see a tremendous amount of increase in the engagement you're getting with patients, because now they start to better understand who you are and what you do. And the clearer that is, the more strong your practice is going to be. As they say in the marketing world, confusion limits conversion. So if there is confusion, it's going to be difficult to have somebody understand and make a clear decision. It's very difficult. So think about copywriting, think about things from a patient's point of view, think about it in a patient-centric way, and think about it from a benefit-driven standpoint. If you do that, you're going to be on the right track.
So are you doing your own copywriting, or do you hire somebody as a freelancer to help you with that? Or
You're
both?
looking at them. So I spent a lot of time, energy, and money learning to do the best that I can. So I definitely have help. I work with other, creative individuals on my team that help out. But a lot of that does come from what I think of, because ultimately, you can outsource it, no question. We help docs with that. But the bottom line is, you as a practicing doc, you understand what's going on, and you know the questions that you're getting. It's just a matter of tuning in your radio station upstairs to hear it, and to make sure that you jot it down so you don't forget. When you start doing that, you'll start those steps, and it's a skill, right? It just takes practice. The first headline and email subject line you write probably is going to stink. Don't stress about it. It's a skill. Your first adjustment isn't as good as your 50,000th adjustment. Same goes for writing and copywriting. It's a skill, but think basic. Most of us overthink it, and that becomes the challenge.
Wow, I think you're really the communication guy. This is another fun question, but I actually think I already figured out what your superpower is. But what is your superpower?
I'm going to go a little bit different. I think my superpower is consistency. So I am willing to show up time and time again. Anybody that's ever, seen me online or got an email from me knows that, because they're going to see it time and time again. So I think my biggest, I had a friend say that my energy is not necessarily a SpaceX rocket. It's more of a diesel engine. I just keep going day after day. So it's really the consistency and the desire to show up, the desire to keep learning and telling whatever my story is. And hopefully that applies to docs out there, and those that it has resonated with is impactful to me. And I take pride in the fact that I'm helping them resonate with more people. But my superpower, in my opinion, is consistency after day.
Do the work. That's great. Have you ever read any of Pressfield's books on do the work? So yeah, that's also a very good, a very, very good book. So where do you see chiropractic going in the next 5 years?
That's a great question. I think there's just so much opportunity out there. There's a lot of ways that things could go. I'll tell you, sometimes I get asked, what am I most excited about? And I think it ties into exactly what you said. And it ties into a lot of, ironically, what you guys have been up to over at Parker as well, which is sports performance is an area that is really, really interesting to me, because I look back and we could see the seeds of it maybe 15 years ago as some of the professional level teams started to add on chiropractors under the, below the covers. Nobody really knew, but those of us on the inside knew. And now that sports performance world has exploded. There's not a Division I school that doesn't have a chiropractor. Every professional sports team across every single league has a chiropractor on staff. And we start to see these really interesting performance aspects of it. And the emerging research gets really exciting. There's a lot still to learn. And there's a lot of, I think trepidation at, okay, how far is this going to go? But sports performance is an area where I see a lot of young docs being really excited about and passionate, which is awesome, because typically that's going to tell you that you're on the right track. That's going to give you the ability to maybe be your own diesel engine, where you can just get after it day in and day out because of that passion. So sports performance is an area that I think is really, really interesting, because it spreads out. It goes professional level all the way down to the retiree that's just looking to swing the golf club. And that it really encapsulates a lot of what we do. We are movement-based professionals, whole body in terms of exercise, regional, and segmental, of course, in terms of spinal manipulation or adjustment. So I always think about things in movement, and I think sports performance fits right in with that.
Wow, that's great. And I agree with that. We've actually doubled down on that at Parker University. We've just created our Parker Fit gym next door to us here, 21,000 square feet, dedicated to human performance. And we're offering concurrent master's degrees to our students in topics such as strength and human performance, neurology, MPH, nutrition, all things that kind of link together that human performance aspect. And I've treated the Naval Academy football team for 7 years. I've treated astronauts. I've treated very high-ranking members of our government and special forces troops. So I've had the opportunity to really see what chiropractic can do to help that. So I know that's something kind of a low-hanging fruit for research. Certain things it's harder to research out, but performance, we can do that. Reaction time, things like that, is relatively easy to research. So we're drawing to a close here. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
It's exciting. Everything that you just brought up. I mean, that gets really exciting, especially as these new classes of students are going to come out and have the opportunity to really get experience. That is just so critically important. And I know I'm excited to see, your research team continue to put out just fantastic things. So I'm excited to continue to learn with you.
So we're going to finish off here. Like, what is one key takeaway that you'd like to leave with the audience? And also, if people wanted to get a hold of you, how would you like them to contact you?
Yeah, if anybody watching would like to get a hold of me, you can shoot me an email. Jeff@theevidencebasedchiropractor.com is probably the easiest thing. If you type Jeff Langmaid into Google, you'll find me one way or the other. But if you want to reach out directly, I'd more than welcome you to do so. Jeff@theevidencebasedchiropractor.com. In terms of the big takeaway, my big takeaway is thank you for being a chiropractor. Watching this, taking the time. Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Thank you, everybody at Parker. But everybody that's really, digesting this series and really learning, thank you for being a chiropractor. You're incredibly needed. When we look at the stats and the data and the research in terms of the challenges that people are struggling with, and then we go all the way to the other end, on the performance side of things, there is such a need for who we are and what we do. And the evolution of that is so exciting. And again, I know that sometimes day-to-day in practice, sometimes it might not feel that way. But I just would like everybody to know, you're valued, you are important, and we are together changing the course of healthcare in the future. It takes a long time. It's all slower than we'd like, but every adjustment that you deliver, every assessment that you deliver, every rehab exercise that you deliver is making an impact on somebody's life. And there's nothing more important than that. So thank you for being a chiropractor.
Thank you, Jeff Langmaid. Thank you for joining us at Parker Success Academy, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Parker seminar.
Thanks for watching another episode of Parker Success Academy with Dr. William E. Morgan.